Today, I get to be here with my good friend, Mr. David Donhoff. And as you know, there's always a word that frames these podcasts. And today's word, David, is the word trust, or in the case of you specifically, one who is trusted. And why did that word first come to mind in my mind? It was simply that everything I know about you and have experienced from you exudes a sense of solidity. You're a money manager. And when people say, okay, here's a pile of dough, what should I do? How should I navigate this? Here's my goals and objectives. They trust you. They trust your advice. They do what you're told to do. You advise them to do. And trust is something, of course, that you earn by consistent results, consistent following through. And so I think that there's not a lot of words I'd want to be known for, but that's probably one of them. But I think you are known for that. And so there, by way of introduction, that's a tough way to start, but there you go, man. Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. That's an amazing word to be known for.
Yeah.
It is absolutely a cornerstone word, to be sure, of virtually everything that's important in life. And I can definitely say that trust is not just earned. It has to be adopted. We have to know ourselves, and we have to trust ourselves before anybody can decide to trust us. That's my belief.
And the process of trusting yourself, right? We all have influences. We all have this forming that goes on when we're young. We don't really even realize it. What models of trust did you see that instilled you being able to trust yourself and grow on and build on that?
Well, I think certainly how you are taught to take on adversity, the way that you respond to the tests that you face in life from the earliest stages onwards, and how you learn to address adversity and challenges. Gives you your self-awareness of what you have within you and what you will do and what you won't do. And that ends up establishing the trust that you have for yourself. And of course, when you trust yourself, you begin to not be concerned of how much you earn of others' trust. And of course, that generates trust. When you're no longer dancing to try to establish and cast trust, people feel it. And know that there's an authenticity, a centeredness, a groundedness that the people proceed from.
You know, I'm not a psychologist. It seems, though, only logical. I'm more one that I get how critical it is, the forming of how we think and how we think about ourselves is really that initial forming. When somebody is raised in an environment that expresses anything but belief in yourself, in other words, when their very presence is well, I guess I'm reflecting on my own dad right now, that where him being there was like almost a burden. It was an unwanted inconvenience that his life was there to contend with. And so belief in himself, the belief he had was that he was unwanted, that he was a burden, that he certainly wasn't somebody strong who should and could be trusted. How do you undo that? Are we all just hopeful that the influences young teach us self-belief? Because many people are not taught that.
Well, that is certainly difficult, isn't it? I mean, it comes down to the nature and nurture question.
Right.
How much of who we are comes from the influences that we absorb, and how much of who we are is inherent to us individually. I don't know that there's any standard. I suspect and believe that it's both, and in different measures at different times for each of us. So I'm sorry to hear your dad felt that way. Yeah. And of course that ended up being a piece of your nurture, if not your nature. It did. What you would take from there and reproduce from there would be, it could be good, bad, or ugly.
Yeah. Those influences. Tell me a little bit about your parents, about what a day in the life of your childhood looked like and your family, and what was normal. what could you expect out of every day?
Sure. Well, I grew up in a very, very moderate, modest, middle class Southern California neighborhood. Like to say, a part of East LA. And my dad was engineering technologist for Chevron, and my mom was a nurse. So the entire paternal side of my family were all engineers or engineer types. The entire maternal side, my mother was a nurse, my aunts both matriculated in nurses. Their father was a physician, so all medical, people huggers, lovers, cuddlers, healers.
Right.
The paternal side is all numbers crunchers, dry jokes.
So this explains some things.
It does, right?
Because you're definitely both.
It is. And so I like to say that, the maternal side was all the huggers, the paternal side were all the numbers crunchers. I split the difference and went into personal finance.
Right. Yeah. Gosh, yeah, I think that's it's too logical, but I get it.
It ends up making sense. Yeah.
And at an early age, athletics were a big part of your life. Where did that influence? Was your dad very involved in athletics?
Oh, yeah.
How did that? Okay.
Yeah, my dad was a jock for sure, and basketball. In fact, he played basketball and football as he was growing up, and then as I was growing up, he was a travel basketball coach. He created a travel basketball league in Southern California, along with some other gentlemen. They launched the Golden State Basketball Organization in Southern California, which ended up morphing and developing, and we see a lot of club travel teams for kids today, which were modeled on the system that my dad helped create in Southern California. And so from third grade through eighth grade, 10, 11 months a year, we were playing basketball, practicing twice a week and tournaments on the weekends, as you see the kids doing today.
Wow.
Driving all over the place, and learned, played advanced basketball all the way up through eighth grade on travel teams, and of course through high school. I am 6'2" on a good day. I was 6 foot in sixth grade. So
wow.
And I was literally head and shoulders above all the other kids that we were playing with up until high school, and I had visions of grandeur. I studied with the best. I was coached by John Wooden, the all-time UCLA great, and Swen Nader and Jamal Wilkes and summer basketball camp. And I had absolutely matched myself in my mind among the best of the best and the greatest and the greatest. And had I kept growing at the same rate, maybe I may have been there, but I came to a screeching halt. And everybody else began to catch up and then surpass me and jump higher and run faster. And so I shifted from my basketball being my primary sport into football, and I played football all the way up through Division I San Diego State University. And at which point I came to the realization that I was not going NFL. And not so much for lack of physical skills, but I didn't have the cultural drive at that football level, and so I shifted from my final year in football over to rugby, which at that time at San Diego State was the top rugby club in the nation, and we went on to become the national championships and national champs in 1987. However, as I said before the podcast, in the final season, I took my football skills and applied them very perfectly into the wrong sport in rugby, and on a kickoff tackled a guy and paralyzed myself, unplugged C5 and C6 on my right side, and ended up taking myself literally out of not just the game, but the sport and athletics in whole. It took me 3 years for that paralysis to recover by the nerves gradually growing back down through my shoulders and my arms to where the point where I can actually use my functions. But that was an amazing gift, frankly, because it forced me in a way that maybe nothing else may have, because I look back at other athletes that I played with and other athletes that I've met over time, very serious, very accomplished athletes that have never really found an alternative to the athletic discipline, the athletic life. And I was forced to look for where can I take my focus, my intentions, and find another way of excelling, another way of achieving, another way of growing.
Another identity almost.
Yeah, entirely an identity. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. It was an abrupt shift, and I wish I could say that I pivoted faster, but I made ultimately the pivot, and to where today I found what I find is my dharma, my purpose, my life is and it comes back to my maternal side, but banishing anxiety, eliminating the uncertainty and unease that people have when they make their transitions from what they've spent an entire life doing, working, building, developing, and then what now? Not just what now, but how do I make sure that if I shift and change, somebody's not going to come sweep my feet out from underneath me.
Right. You know, it's so interesting that the engineering side, the number cruncher, the deal structurer, that left brain side of what people would say, oh, well, this is what you do. You're a money manager. You're left brain. You're a calculator. You know, you're that kind of guy. But the way you describe it is very right brain.
It is.
It's banishing anxiety. Doesn't sound anything like numbers or engineering. It's comfort food, and yet you're able to take somebody's financial life, and even though there may not be warranted anxiety, I'm sure there always is, because it's the unknown. How do you create some solidity, some lack of anxiety, some assuredness in a world that oftentimes is a moving target? How do you achieve that goal of
Yes.
hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of families. I mean, you have a reputation of everywhere I go, it's truly families. Some of these families have been students of mine, but there's this sense of we're in good hands. We're good. It's all, Dave's got it. We've got a plan. We're working it. I mean, who can say that? Hundreds and hundreds of families where you've banished financial anxiety.
Right.
That is a calling.
It is,
How do you achieve that? Give me the secret sauce for that, because is it right brain, left brain? Is it all brains? I mean,
Checklists.
Checklist. Okay. All right.
I mean, it's come down to you can get as granular and deep as possible, but when you really want to go to the upper levels, the very simple fundamentals, there's exceptions to everything. And in retirement finance, in glide path finance, there's really 5 critical aspects that need to be accounted for and planned.
Okay.
Right? Income security. That's the ability to pay bills for the rest of the days we have on the planet. Right? And during our working years, great. I know I've got a paycheck. I've got knowledge. I know I've got skills. I know if this job doesn't work out, I go pick up another one across town. I have income security. But when we're ready to pull the plug, shut off the engines. I use the airplane metaphor all the time. We're ready to shut off the engines and turn into a glider. What's going to keep me afloat? What's going to keep me in the air, right? Number 2, portfolio protection or asset protection. During our accumulation, our working, grinding years, we're spending less than we're making, and we're adding it into the pot. We're adding it into the pie.
People are spending less than they're making.
Hopefully,
Right.
yes.
Right. Okay.
That's the intention. That's what we're taught. That's the goal. When we shut off the engines and we are relying on what we've accumulated, the vagaries, the shifts, the changes, the volatilities in life can sweep our altitude away from us. And when we're no longer working, how are we going to get that altitude back? So we've got to defend, protect, and put safety nets under our assets to assure that they will, at minimum, last us for the rest of our days. The third aspect, tax reduction. Taxes, although they say that death and taxes, that was Ben Franklin said death and taxes are cannot be avoided. It's not true. We can't avoid death,
Right.
but we can reduce, if not avoid, much, if not all of our taxes. The tax code's not black and white whatsoever, and as is with everything, if you take the default plan is not in your favor. The proper plan can be very much better than the default plan. Fourth aspect is healthcare extension. So what does that mean? Well, we've got to have some way of protecting ourselves when we're down and out. During our working years, we have our regular short-term health insurance. And when we're younger, we recover. If we go to the hospital, they fix us up and kick us out. Most people never realize, because they've never had anything last that long, that our regular short-term health care, short-term, covers us generally 90 to 100 days. Well, that's true until we retire. When we retire and or hit 65, we qualify for the government subsidized health care, Medicare. Medicare is also short-term. It covers us for 90 to 100 days. But now that we're older, we're subject to the potential of things taking us down that takes longer to recover from. And it used to be, the common joke was, well, I got a 22 in my desk at home. When things go south, I'm going to take myself out. Nice joke. It never happens.
Right.
Because even if we had full intentions, cognitive impairment makes us forget where the bullets are.
Right. We're so messed up, we don't even remember where we put the gun.
But more importantly, and it's shockingly how acceleratingly fast, in just the last 5 to 10 years, medical technology and safety technologies have improved so rapidly that the odds of us dying from a cataclysmic event are so low that we're almost guaranteed to have a gradual decline rather than a steep drop off, which means that we're going to need help longer than 90 to 100 days, and Medicare runs out. Well, what are you going to do after that? Most people figure, well, I heard about that long-term care stuff, and looked at that, stupid expensive. Nobody can afford that anymore, so we're going to self-insure. And there's alternatives now to being able to make sure that we're not trapped, even without traditional long-term care insurance. So there's ways to make sure that we're not trapped. We're able to rely on ourselves for our own comfort, and we're not going to capsize our spouse specifically if we need help before they do. And we're guys, right? What do? We die first.
Right.
But now, before we die, we take our time, we chew up some resources.
Right.
And the ladies last a lot longer than us, right?
Right.
So it all comes into the making sure that the ducks are all lined up so that everybody is anxiety banished, right? Everything's safe. Lastly, the last of the 5 is longevity and legacy. That's not just what we're going to do when we leave things behind. Us guys, we think about that, right? The ladies even thinking about even more. I want to make sure that we take care of the kids, the grandkids. But here's my concern. The last 5 to 10 years. For a lot of us, the last 5 to 10 years, what we call the longevity years, we got 2 measurements in life, vitality and longevity, and they don't match. Longevity is how long we live. Vitality is how long we live well. We run out of vitality before we run out of longevity. Quick story about my dad. So a lot of people hear these days the term graying divorce, right? That's divorces that happen generally after their 60s or whatever. And that happened to my family. My mom and dad split in their early 60s. And they had a great run together until they no longer did. And it was one of those things where when they split, my brother and I both took a big sigh of relief. We loved both of them dearly, stuck very tight with both of them, but we're really happy that they split. Right. And my dad ended up reconnecting with a wonderful lady and getting remarried. And Terry was not a nurse, didn't have any particular healthcare background, and my dad was concerned about how we're going to cover health insurance, healthcare, medical long-term care. Called the financial advisor in the family, and that's when I began to discover that the options for most people are really prohibitively expensive. It just doesn't make sense for most people. And then I also found alternative ways to get them protection. My dad's concern was for my stepmom. As it turned out, it was my dad that had stroke. And he didn't do it just once. He had a stroke, which shocked us all, and most of all him. Just as he was getting through recovery, just about the 90th-ish day. Remember I said Medicare covers you for about 90 days? Right. Yeah, another stroke. And he did that 3 times. He went 3 months out just to burn through the Medicare, and then had another one to trigger it again. Now, of course, he didn't do that for the purpose of Medicare. But the thing was, it was 3 consecutive strokes, which he recovered. Each and every time was harder, was more difficult. Went through all the training, the physical therapy, he called it physical terrorism, speech therapy, the whole 9 yards. Ended up having a walker, but he recovered enough. He had his sense back, his bad dad jokes back, but he ended up only having about 2 to 3 hours of awakened energy a day before he was wiped out. He was running on 15-20% of his brain cells, right? And he got 5 after his 3 sequential strokes. He got 5 more years of relatively fruitful life before he passed 2 years ago. And so that was a perfect example of we have vitality and then we have longevity. And because we had done a little bit of advanced planning and he had gotten his ducks in a row, My stepmom had no worries. She didn't have to worry about whether his care was going to capsize her life thereafter. And it was a peaceful opportunity. It gave me a chance. Every time we got together, we both knew, not metaphorically,
Right.
very realistically, this might be the very last time we see each other. I got a chance to really integrate his grandson, my son, with him. They got to know each other far better than many get to when they don't have a very present realization that this might be the last time.
Right.
I mean, it probably
Right.
is the last time, and treat it such.
Yeah.
Treat it as such.
Begs a
So-
tough question right out of the gate, doesn't it? Just saying that makes you think, what if in some way you treated every important interaction that way, even somebody who's perfectly healthy and 40 years old? You know, to me, that's the
I'll
question
go further.
that goes through my brain.
I'll go further, and it's a gutsy thing to say, but drop the what if and operate from the assumption.
Right.
Every single thing we do is going to have a last time, and usually we don't realize it when it's occurring. And usually, oftentimes, if we think back, had I known
Right.
that was the last time,
Right.
God, I might have said something else. I might have done things. I might have done things. Guess what? We all have that freedom to treat every moment, not what if, but it is. I mean, I'm going to operate
Such a great
that
point.
this is the last time I have the opportunity to sit with you here in your amazing hangar. I hope it's not.
Yeah,
But let's play like it is.
Let's play like it is. Yeah. No, I think that, you know, honestly, David, I think that if I'm going to instruct Jorge, who's there doing his job, but to right
magician
now,
behind
while
the
it's fresh
curtain.
in my mind, to create that reel, that 30 seconds when you made that point perfectly clear, and let's play it 1 billion times. Already written down. Look at that. Okay. All right. Because it just and maybe it's extra fresh in my mind right this minute, you know, with the loss of my dad, your dad just a couple of years ago, you know. But the fact of the matter is you and I have both been to many a memorial with people who are 8 to 80. Many of them 8 to 40.
Yes.
And you wouldn't normally think, oh, this is our last time, and yet it was. I've lost close friends this year, under 50. And you think, wow, you know, so there are no guarantees. And this lose the if I knew, well, we don't. Therefore, treat it as if. Right?
Let me flip it over.
Yeah,
There
please.
is at least one guarantee. We already brought it up.
Yep, right. It's going to happen.
We all have a deadline.
Yeah, that's it.
None of us know when,
Yeah.
how fast, how soon, but it's guaranteed.
Right.
And it's coming.
Yeah.
And it could literally be now.
And the preparedness to create an anxiety-free preparedness that my ducks are in order. I'm aware. I'm prepared. I've got a plan that allows me to not have anxiety around how I'm going to leave things. To me, that's a calling, as you described it. To deliver that kind of assuredness is really something. It really is, and I can feel your heart, and it's what's kept your interest for a long, long, long time. The road from athletics and a change of identity, like, bam, overnight. You're not on the field tomorrow.
Right.
You're doing something different, if at all, right? The change of identity between there and this calling, there's an interesting roadmap of life there. I want you to walk through that, because I find so much of that as almost being a precursor to this calling, to this ability, to this left and right brain playing itself out. Just like your early hardwiring prepared you, I think this next chapter between athletics and this calling also had a big impact on how you do what you do. Walk me through that, would you?
Well, sure. Try to do that, giving sufficient details without getting boring.
Your life is not boring, David.
Well, so going back, I guess picking up from the point where I explained that my athletic career was in sudden termination, and I was forced into looking at what and how to do. And by the way, that was my second to last year of college, and all the way through college at San Diego State, I was a moderate student because, well, I was a moderate student, not because of, but in addition to being an entrepreneur. I created created from scratch and launched 2 different businesses while I was a full-time student and a full-time athlete in school. And so when the athletics stopped, it just gave me more time to focus on entrepreneurial ventures. When I graduated from San Diego State, I had a bit of a contrarian chip on my shoulder and wondered what kind of job would take me if I didn't graduate, had I not graduated. So I went out and looked for careers, built a resume without any reference of graduation to see what I could get. And I ended up being interviewed and working for a company that created a position for me as a sales director selling to the military in San Diego. So I was the GSA contract representative for IBM, Panasonic, Xerox, and Ricoh business machines down in San Diego. And I did that. I did that career, that business, for about 3 years out of college, and the entire time studying the art of influence, the art of sales, the science of persuasion. And in the process, while I was studying this, and I was 26 at the time, I bumped into a 27-year-old kid that told me that, you know, it would be a great idea if I just stopped doing that and hit the road and cruised all over with him doing personal development sales training programs. And so why not? So that 27-year-old was Tony Robbins. And that was just the late 80s. So I jumped on with Tony, and I was the Marines, if you will, myself and about a dozen other like me, that we would be the first in to a city. And we literally lived on the road somewhere other than wherever our prior home was, 50 weeks out of 52 a year. And so traveled around. I called this my MBA, Master Business Administration, because we literally lived on the road every single day doing programs, seminars for businesses for the purpose of generating business into the Robbins behemoth, Robbins organization. It wasn't behemoth then, but has become since. Mm-hmm. So lived on the road doing that for about 3.5 years. When that road life got weary and I quote unquote came off the road, a little bit of transition time. And it's funny you mentioned about psychology. So I got initially engaged with Anthony Robbins because of the psychological technology that he had worked with and studied and mastered. And I, of course, went deep into the weeds and sought out many of the teachers that he learned from. I went and met with and learned from and studied with, and I became a certified hypnotherapist among other modalities, and dropped anchor temporarily. Of all the cities that I ever wanted to settle into, of all the places that I had lived on the road, Vancouver, BC was the most beautiful and one of the most culturally engaging. But in the 90s, when I was coming off my road warrior days, Canada didn't want anything to do with Southern immigrants, especially not Americans coming up to take jobs. So I temporarily dropped anchor in Kirkland, Washington. This is in 94, so what's temporary? 30 some odd years ago.
Temporary, must have stuck on a rock or something.
Yeah, I got stuck. Something snagged me. And hung out my shingle as a therapist and built a fairly good therapy practice with a lot of happy therapy clients, but I wasn't making money doing therapy. Mm-hmm. I was making money doing sales skills courses and sales skills trainings for operations all throughout the Puget Sound area. And I got hired to come in and do a sales training for a telemarketing operation for a name you might recognize. Wade Cook.
Oh, right.
And so I came in and taught Wade Cook's sales operations team some skills and techniques. And at the time, he was shifting from a primary focus on real estate into how to trade in the stock markets. Now, I knew nothing about the stock markets whatsoever, but I knew about public speaking. I knew about road warrioring. I knew about seminar management. And so his chief operating officer asked me if I would help their organization develop and roll out their seminar teams. And so I did that for a brief while until I ultimately discovered that the content of the trading systems that he was teaching was extremely less than sophisticated. It was extremely simplified, and it was very easy to buy into. It was also very easy for people to lose a substantial amount of their money, and they were selling these how-to trading systems on a beg and a whim for people to get wealthy and recover from lack of accumulation by making it big. Now, this was in the 90s. If you remember, this was when the old the metaphor of a monkey could throw a dart at the dartboard and beat the best money managers on Wall Street. So everybody wanted to buy into that theory and that idea, but ultimately, and this is what I learned along the way, the game of investing and especially trading is not a battle against the markets. It's not even a battle against the other traders. It's a battle against the guy in the mirror.
I was going to say, yeah.
And so it was very easy for people. Very easy for people to lose their money having bought into the get-rich-quick trading systems. So while I had been road warrioring once again and bringing that operation up on the road work, I was actually seeking round across and found a professional trading trainer out of the Chicago pits, the commodities pits. And we ended up developing out a model, a system for him to teach far more. He was teaching professionals how to manage arbitrage money in the markets using options. And options, as you may be very well aware, are dynamite. They can absolutely move mountains and blow your fingers off. And so we taught his systems, and at the same time, the way that we taught his systems was by doing live trading in classes on the big screen while the markets were moving, so that the students could watch how we were calculating, how we were putting trades together. And we would not only set them into place, but then track them so they could see, because typically classes were just 1 or 2 days. And we'd put trades in place and they could watch and see if they had actually ended up being profitable, or we've got out without bleeding to death, if we got out safely. And so did that for a period of time, did that for about a year, and I handed that business off to my partner and hunkered down in basement in Kirkland to privately trade my own money with the skills and processes and systems that I developed. Well, the entire time, we had been sending out notifications to the students of our trades, how they unfolded, when they got in, when they got out, et cetera. So I just kept doing the correspondence of, here's the setups, here's what we're doing, here's how we're managing for the next day. And while I was trading my own money, more and more people kept coming back to me saying, hey, why can't I open an account at the same brokerage you've got your money at? And whenever you decide that you're going to get in, you just go ahead and tell the broker to do the same thing with my money. Right. So now, understand, I already told you my entire background. I have no Wall Street pedigree. I was not a stockbroker. I was not, this is back in the days before hedge funds were regulated. So we found ways where we could literally do that. And in a fairly moderate short order, I had a little over $10 million under management. Now, 10 million is nothing. Today, that doesn't even open the door. But back then, mid-90s, this was a pretty momentous
working out
amount.
Of your basement.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
And working out of my basement in Juanita, Washington. And so we did really, really well. For about 9 months, this was a volatility arbitrage strategy that simply meant that it didn't matter whether the markets were going up or going down. As long as the markets were wiggling, we made money. And we made money to the tune of about 24% compounding per month for 9 months. Now, anybody that knows anything about math, right off the bat, that throws up a red flag of BS. Yeah, that's impossible.
Right.
It's not impossible, but it's unsustainable. And in a 10-day period in October of 97, and you guys can go look at the historical charts, you'll see nothing. You'll see nothing. You'll see a very simple, quiet market, and that was the problem. Because my volatility arbitrage made money when it was wiggling, and when it wasn't wiggling, it was decaying. And in a 10-day period, our accounts dropped down 30%. Now, 10 days, 30%. Now, this is back at that moment in time, as I had developed this quote-unquote hedge fund. I didn't call it a hedge fund back then. I didn't even know what a hedge fund particularly was back then. However, and I didn't have the self-identity of being a money manager. I was never a pedigreed stockbroker or anything like that. I was just a doofus, just a guy running a system that I knew how it worked. I knew what I was doing. I trusted myself. And so I said, you know, all these big name money managers out there, they have a standard process, and they typically charge 2% annual management fees, and then they take a 20% piece of the profit on the way up. That's the 2 and 20 rule for hedge funds. I said, who am I? I'm just guy. I mean, I'm just doing what I'm doing, and I don't see myself as worthy of charging fees. So I'm not going to charge any fees for people who want to come in. However, we make money, and I'm confident we're going to make money. I'm going to split it 50-50 on the way up. But if you invest in hedge funds and they lose money, they don't split the losses. You take 100% of the losses. I'm going to turn that upside down, and we're going to mark the market in our joint accounts together. Every single month, we're going to watch how we grow. In any given month, if you want to exit, I'll make you good if we're underwater, up to 20%. So you'll never walk away with less than 20%, with less than 80% of what you previously had at a high water mark. This was unheard of. Nobody did this. There was grumbling among the people I talked to that it was in some way non-compliant or illegal or something like that, and it wasn't. But regardless, so we back to the point. We had a 10-day period. We dropped 30%. Remember, my promise was 20, and 100% of my investment partners said, "Hey, this is just a bump in the road. Rub some dirt on it. Get back in the game." The problem was my system failed. The worst that I had ever seen back testing of my system was a 13% drawdown, a 13% drop in any given month. And we just had 30% drop in 10 days. So given the newly found uncertainties, I closed the fund, refunded back the partners. Everybody left, quote unquote, in the black. But in my making good on my promise, I completely emptied out all of my money. So literally, in a snap of a finger, by a decision, I voluntarily became bankrupt. Not legally bankrupt. We never filed for bankruptcy.
Did you feel a sense of vulnerability in that
my
moment
God.
with the reality that your system?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
that's the whole reason why I shut down. I was like, WTH, where did this go? I thought I had all the ducks, everything all sorted and organized. And that's why I made this promise, this bottom line safety net guarantee is like, I've tested the SWIT thing every way through Thursday. And then a new reality was unleashed, right? So yeah, I mean, literally over a very, not overnight, but over a very short period of time, I went from high flying to literally, I was actually $70,000 underwater, which some people have been a lot more underwater than that, but that was deep enough.
Got your attention.
and no particular obvious way to buy lunch tomorrow. So among supportive people that were around me, I made it until I found a company that was looking for help in the range of reading the market. So there was a multi-branch mortgage company that hired me to help their loan officers learn how to read the bond markets, because mortgage loan officers have to know when to lock their interest rates, when to float the interest rates to get a little bit better, how to hedge, et cetera. So I taught that to them as a consultant. At the same time, I observed the nature and character of their loan officers. Oh my Lord. There's a lot of room for improvement here. So
not just on the left side of the brain. You're talking about them as salespeople.
Exactly. Absolutely. So I jumped in. This was before 98 when the licensing rules changed. Jumped in, began originating mortgages, ended up getting a brokerage license, built out a mortgage company I ended up owning for 15 years, and built our entire business online. This is before Facebook, what was before Facebook? Friendster or something like that, MySpace. This was way back in the OG days when the primary financial conversations were at a place called The Motley Fool. And so there were online message boards at The Motley Fool. And what I ended up doing was originally going there to learn, not to give. I went to learn. I was like, I'm a novice. I don't know anything about this mortgage world. Where can I go to find answers? And so I went and I found people asking questions and people answering questions, but I scratched my head going, those answers don't seem right. And so I would go find the more accurate answers and go in and contribute. And somebody else would ask a question and I'd go back, research it, find the correct answers, go back and contribute. And one thing ended up snowballing in another. In a very short period of time, I ended up being the 8,000-pound gorilla of real estate and real estate finance at the Motley Fool. And so business came to us primarily online from that, and less than 2% of our business was from Washington State. About the entire time that we built this, we built it from the perspective of financial advisors rather than debt salespeople or ancillary tools to buy homes and real estate. We treated all of the finance as financial product, financial strategy, including the management of leverage, getting leverage to work to your advantage rather than just using it as a tool for consumption. And approximately, I want to say 2000, we discovered various different financial products, financial asset products that we could bring into the mix where it was relatively safe, protected, and guaranteed, banishing anxiety, where people could use their leverage as an arbitrage. And this, remember, as interest rates were gradually declining down, there became points where people could utilize money from the equity they accumulated in their real estate. The real estate itself was doing what it was doing, but the cost of leverage was dropping down below the rates of growth on the safer assets, so they could create a triangulation and actually increase their path to freedom, increase their opportunities. Excuse me. So we brought those in, and again, back to snowballs. That was 2000. Here we are, 2023. So ended up being one thing led to another. We brought in insurance licensing. We brought in securities licensing. We brought in the full 5-point financial planning, and we've grown to the point where we are today. So, yeah, there's some of the details. There's probably a lot more in the weeds.
You know, one of the things that you said, I think is just at least the way you've categorized it, is that typically people don't think of a mortgage, getting a mortgage on a home beyond the tool to buy the home. That's it. I need the home. I want the home. Here's a tool that's going to allow me to finance it. And it's almost a static observation of this is just part of the checklist of getting from here to moving my couch in the door. It doesn't mean more than that.
Yes.
But you talk about it in very, very different terms.
Absolutely.
As a tool that, given the cost and the allowability of that mortgage, can be used as a tool to leverage and build from in terms of creating wealth. The debt and the debt thereof becoming a usable tool to grow from.
Absolutely.
I don't know that, I mean, I understand that. I teach that.
Yes.
But I think that people thinking on a mortgage, it's to them, it's on the checklist of putting utilities in their name, getting the mortgage, getting a moving truck lined up. It's just a checklist item. And of course, you'd like to buy it like any other item as cheaply as possible, get the best rate. I think that's all common sense. And yet, not really recognizing that what this is so much more than that if you understood it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. When we met, one of the, and I can tell you even just the couple that brought us together, students of mine that were a part of your community of families that were very well versed and put together in terms of their life planning. They were free of anxiety. They wanted to continue on and build wealth. And I think they took a day seminar or something of that. But I remember after the seminar, they said the way you talk about debt as a tool, boy, do you need to meet Dave. And I go, well, I'm interested in Dave already because there aren't many people that think the way I think about debt. I've certainly met a few.
Yes.
But that concept was almost our our appetizer as friends and colleagues. And I think it's interesting how just that tool itself of what is debt and what is it in terms of a business idea, cost of funds of the bank of you, of something to go from and to leverage and to work from. Dive into some of the way we think on debt. All notes are not alike.
Oh, no.
All collateral agreements are not alike. I want to hear it from you because I get sick of hearing myself talk about it.
Well, I was certainly I was deep into that path long before I met you, but you've absolutely added to that as well. And so a lot of synergy, a lot of appreciation to you bringing your thoughts and perspective as that as well. Quick shout out to Pat and Kelly Azzarello.
That's right.
We absolutely
Thank you,
love
Pat
and appreciate,
Kelly. Yes,
appreciate
absolutely,
you.
Yeah.
And I actually brought them to you.
Yes.
And but debt. All right. So debt sure sounds a whole lot similar to death, right? And so our lizard brain hears that and immediately makes that equation, right? It's a very fearful, dangerous, terminal thing in our mind that we have to wrap our heads around and overcome, frankly. That's why leverage is our firm. Leverage is the ability to use OPM, other people's money, yes, but other people's minds, other people's strengths, other people's resources. And for whatever reasons, there are ways to put money to work where the person who has that money wants a benefit for their money and wants to have others utilize it and get more benefit by their efforts, their expertise, their mind. And by the way, just as an aside, you realize that capitalism, the root of capitalism is capo, the head, the mind. Capital is nothing but intellect-informed labor. Capitalism and labor are not opposites. They are one and the same. So leverage is simply a matter of utilizing OPM, other people's money, other people's resources, and adding the magic, adding the mind that the money by itself doesn't have. So when you can take knowledge, take strategy, take experience, add it to the recipe, and have
Dave a bottle of water. Thanks.
Be great.
Yeah,
thanks.
thank you.
If you can add that to the recipe of the dollars and have those dollars perform because of that recipe, and also reward the source of those dollars, you've got a perfect match, a perfect opportunity to create more value, to give all of society more of what society really wants, which is how wealth is created. Wealth is not stolen. Wealth is not. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Wealth is generated by giving people what they really want. I don't know if that answers your question about leverage and debt, though.
It is a huge topic, and I recognize that. I often go into a very, very simple little speech thinking, okay, let's think in terms of banks. What do banks do, right? They lend money. How do banks make money? Well, they make money in four ways. They make money in margin. What's margin? The difference between their cost of funds and what they're lending it to you. There's a gap there. There's a spread there. There's a space there that's income to a bank.
Yes.
Right? Okay. Margin. They charge fees for this service. That's another income source. Another category of income to lending the money is they charge you fees to borrow the money at a new rate different than their rate. Okay, there's 2. 3, penalties. If you don't do what you're supposed to do, it's going to cost you. And quite honestly, I know this sounds a little bit clandestine, but there's almost encouragement to incur a certain amount of penalties. The 2 choices: pay this by the 1st or pay this by the 15th.
Exactly.
Either one works fine.
Yeah.
We're good. And of course, more time and you think it's not that big a deal. Let's just do it on the 15th. Mm-hmm. Well, when you look at how that changes a yield in a year, penalties are a huge bucket of income to credit industries. And then the 4th is servicing. They charge you to service the loan they just gave you.
Yes.
Because somebody's got to pay for that. Well, okay, that's their business. And they're very upfront about it. It's all in very black and white, and here it is, and sign here that you understand. I want people to understand that so that there's an opportunity to act accordingly. Mm-hmm. That in the world of real estate, as we're borrowing money, we are in control of an asset with borrowed money, but now we have the ability to not just sell the asset, we can also sell the money. Mm-hmm. We can also improve on. We can add our verse, our expertise, our contribution, our resource to what exists to still provide opportunity, but we can act now like the next bank in line, for example. And in terms of collateral of the asset, when we start moving the collateral and unweighting an asset from debt because the collateral is shifted, now we have a clean palette to lend and to do and to create or to sell without any debt associated with it. And so all of a sudden we're thinking second dimension of monetization of an opportunity, and then a third, and then a fourth. And when we start looking at 2 or 3 chessboards all on top of each other, it starts adding up. And it gives us flexibility, and it gives us the ability to withstand the unknowns. Mm-hmm. Shock absorbers on cars are really important because chuck holes exist, right? Well, there's a lot of chuck holes in the unknown of our future financial world. So building shock absorbers and movability into the terms, into the collateral, this isn't just benefiting me as the creator of this, it's benefiting everybody who's in the car.
Yes.
Who wants to do that? Yeah. Let's make sure we have things built in that we sustain those things we can't see. Yes. Well, I think going back when you created your first system, and here it is, let's roll. This is it. It's working. And then all of a sudden, some obscure 10-day period in October hits and you go, whoa, that was a chuck hole I had never seen before. Right. And now there's a vulnerability that I've never experienced. I've got to retool. I've got to cash out, rethink, and come at this again with systems and thinking that absorbs the unknown. I don't know if that summarizes it well, but I think in that general vein, that paragraph or two is your mind and I right out of the gate when we first connected, there was almost a humble understanding of this is an important reality to get, not only in building wealth and the future, but in just sustainability towards a portfolio in the here and now. That what else is about life that isn't described as the unknown? Tomorrow is an unknown, right? In every capacity, in the discussions we have, and the last time we've talked to somebody, is there going to be another? You see how the themes all come in, and your theme is preparedness. And I'm an old Eagle Scout. Be prepared. Well, wow. I don't know. Do something with that. That's kind of how I think.
I gotta jump in and say this for all of our watchers here. This is something that Greg undersells, because we all know that real estate is an asset. It's considered an asset, and absolutely. And for most, leverage or debt as a way to access that asset. And yes, those of us that go to the next level understand that that debt is also an asset to the bank,
Right.
to the bank, to the lender, to the hard money lender, whatever. Okay, theoretically, great. That's all fine. And as that asset in and of itself, it is to the lender secured by the real estate, the asset that we have right here, right? So far, I've said nothing shocking, unique, or groundbreaking. And then what should or could or might be the biggest flair from Mr. Greg Pinneo is the mastery of substitution of collateral. That blew my mind when I learned. I mean, I know all about structuring proper debt, structuring leverage. That is an amazing concept to be able to create secure assets, financial assets, and re-secure them with movements of different collateral, creates an entire opening of opportunity, creates an entire world of entrepreneurialism. And of course, I'm preaching to the priest himself.
Well,
but
it is a game changer. And there's days that I realize my own ineptitude to communicating just how important that is. Sometimes I'll pause. Sometimes I'll say, okay, you're not thinking deeply enough. You're not extrapolating. This changes the whole way we could and should approach this business.
absolutely.
That we're buying real estate, but secondarily,
Yes.
we're buying well thought out debt
Yes.
and the terms thereof. And a big part of those terms is the ability to recollateralize the debt, which oftentimes necessitates the ability to slice the note up.
Yes.
To properly slice the note so that debt and note and encumbrance are married properly.
Yes.
And so these tools of negotiating this, and then how do you do that so you can show the absolute favor and benefit to the seller, soon to be beneficiary of this note.
Yes.
How is this framed and truly framed to say this is why this is beneficial to you? Proper collateralization, continued non-receipt of principal that continues, our deferral of capital gains, that, on and on and on. In other words, really understanding it in and out, and yet here's an entirely different opportunity. I heard somebody say once that recently, talking about social media and how they position their business, it's that they made a statement that I thought, oh, that's kind of interesting. I really have to think about that. We are a marketing company that happens to do real estate. I went, that's really interesting. When I think of you, I think of a real estate company. No. We're a marketing company that happens to do real estate. And I went, And then I went, well, I'm a buyer of real estate who actually is more interested in a buyer of debt.
Yes. Yes.
It's like, it just looks like I do real estate.
Right. Exactly.
Because this came with it.
Exactly.
And it's not that this is insignificant. It's not. It's it's a study even of itself, the actual sticks and bricks and dirt and zoning. And that's one thing.
Yeah.
But that's not the only thing. And sometimes it's the lesser important thing than the debt.
Yeah.
Because the debt is going to take me to the moon.
Yeah.
This is going to take me to the end of the block. And that reality, when you really absorb it, it takes the right tools and structure to create that kind of debt with that flexibility, with that depth of thought. But when you do, and when you create it, the whole game changes.
Yes.
Right.
That's where the fun is.
That's where the fun is. Yeah. Right. Now we're having a party. Yeah. 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 Isn't that crazy? The mind, David, that and the roadmap that's led here. One thing I completely appreciate about this story of your life is not just the reinvention or the next segue, but it's how one has assisted and built toward the next. And that there's never a, this is done, I'm starting over thing. It's a next chapter of reinvention, of built on awareness, of seeing opportunity, of adaptation, and how they're all connected. And you wouldn't be here without this road that started here. And to look at life that way, I think if people think in terms of, this has now failed and I'm starting over. That's a perspective shift that's definitely necessary to have, in my opinion, that one is the entree. It's the tuition paid to think on the next one.
There's no failures.
None.
There's only lessons and steps to the next level.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I really believe that. You have this amazing family, and of course, coming from your family and these very left and right brain influences. Tell me about being a dad. Tell me about being a husband. These are things that I need a notepad to take notes on, because I can promise you're better at that than I am.
I don't. But I wouldn't take that promise.
I want to hear how that all is incorporated into this very entrepreneurial life that you've lived forever. How does that work?
Well, shortly after I imploded in my my managing of a hedge fund arbitrage strategy, I went out on a date with a lovely young lady who loves to tell the story now that she didn't realize that I took her out on a date with the only $20 that I had. And this was when $20 could actually get a dinner at a restaurant in Seattle.
Right.
And as the history says, one thing led to another, and we've been together ever since. That was we got together in '97. And her name's Joanne. And so Joanne emigrated from China and literally left China she was born and raised in Beijing, and she left during the Tiananmen Square Massacre. That's what we call it, the Tiananmen Square Massacre, of course. Chinese call it the student uprising. And she had grown up as a driven kid, and learned English in her early teens, and had done side work as an interpreter for visiting business people. And so when that event happened, she was urged, by family and others, now's your chance, get out of here. And so she got an emergency student visa and migrated to Chattanooga, Tennessee, of all places, for a young Chinese immigrant to go. She finished her college degree with a degree in accounting, summa cum laude, which is Latin for really smart. And she stayed in Chattanooga just long enough to decide that she wanted to come out to the West Coast. So she literally spun the map and sent out resumes to anybody that might take an accountant, and got a job out here in Seattle. And so we met a year or so after she arrived here. And eventually we developed a family. And when I say developed, there's more to this story. We had a daughter who was with us for 9 weeks before she passed of SIDS. And we talk about being very aware and present of the brevity and the uncertainty of life. We were both older adults, older parents at this point in our mid-40s. And so when we decided to have a family, it was not accidental. It was very focused, very intentional, and with an incredible amount of anticipation and planning and excitement of our child. And she was with us again for about 9 weeks. And when she passed, that was a shattering. That was an absolute shattering of reality as we knew it, as I knew it, and another opportunity to pivot and learn. And something that came from that to me was a complete and total removal of all fear of death and a recognition that is the one guarantee that we all have. The day that we were born, we're all guaranteed the end. And so I don't fear that. What happens is between A to B. And we, after she passed, we adopted a son that we met in Beijing. And so it took us a few years to have him get full capability of joining our family. So when he was ultimately adopted, he was already 19 years old. So I got an instant adult son, which was pretty cool for an older dad. I had a workout buddy, a sports fanatic in the house. Had a lot of fun together. But one thing I'm really amazed at and proud at is although he came over, he was already, frankly, a very well-formed adult boy, been raised by his grandparents in China. And he did not take a single dime for education. He lived in my home. He lived with me. He was my buddy, my pal. But he paid his own way 100% by working full-time, went through junior college Cascadia at Ann and Bothell, crossed over and finished at UW, continued on to his master's degree in computer engineering at UW, all on his own dime. And then finally got hired by Microsoft, found a beautiful girl. I got a daughter-in-law now. And so really happy, proud of him. He's doing great. And along the way, after our daughter, about a year after that, we got pregnant, and I have a second son. So my second son is now 13 and coming along with his dad in his dad's shoes. He's hit 6 feet in 7th grade, and he's 8th grade now, and today's his basketball game. So having sprained his ankle a few days ago, this morning, he had me get him all taped up, being the ex-jock myself, get him taped up so that he could play the game today. So having a lot of fun with my boys.
That's just awesome. And, I have a theory, David, and I didn't plan it. I promise you I didn't, but it has been a theme of everybody that I have interviewed so far, is that there is a chapter, if not chapters, of extreme adversity. And I am absolutely already convinced, and have been for a long time in my life, but now more than ever, that character, that grace, that humility, these qualities that make us drawn to people, that when you dig into those qualities, where did this come from? Where did this form itself? Why are you the way you are? Why is your demeanor this way? Somewhere in there, somewhere in the scratching, you'll uncover an adversity that is almost unthinkable and has formed this sense of gratitude, of humility, of strength, etc. These incredible qualities that can only be formed in difficulty. And I've taken this thought for many, many years out to deep ocean and even given lectures that if we were convinced of this, if we believed this, if we really believed this, wouldn't we, for the benefit that we know exists, wouldn't we embrace adversity?
Mm-hmm.
And the minute I sort of thought on that and declared that, I thought back to almost the first thing I was ever taught by my dad. And I don't know if the two are connected but I've extrapolated that learn to embrace, learn to love that which most people won't tolerate. In other words, repelling it, rejecting it, saying it isn't so. You won't garner the benefit that is there if you accept what nobody would have ever wanted. But when you accept it and when you draw from it, it's created in you a character. And it is a common thread. I promise you it is. I know if you thought on it, the people you admire most, the people who you're most drawn to, the people who ask the questions, who I don't know, you know what I'm saying here.
Mm-hmm.
There's something deep down there that has created that doesn't get created anywhere else. And so I really appreciate your willingness to go through that chapter of overcoming and getting through that tragedy and now watching this family grow in a different way than maybe you envisioned to start. But here it is, and it's beautiful. And that's awesome. Well, I know one thing for sure, David, that we could sit here for hours and on so many topics. I could take out a notepad and just learn so much. The 5 points that you laid out about how you bring this anxiety-free, place to finances and retirement, things like that. It's so worthy of really thinking deep. How do people, I mean, David Donhoff, but how do they find you more directly? I want them to be able to continue this conversation with you and draw on your resource. How do they get a hold of you most easily?
Well, we're not hard to find.
Yeah.
I'm not hard to find,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
All the standard searches will find us very easily. Our firm is Leverage Planners. We're in Bellevue, Washington. Mm-hmm. But of course, as I start off with, this is my conversation with you. This is not any kind of professional pitch conversation. This is
I know
two old warriors.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, absolutely. Well, this idea of trust is how we started this, and as I form my thoughts around the thing I would like to leave people with, it's really twofold. One, I think you've covered really well in this growing. There is no failure. There is no failure. That reality, if you could get your arms around trusting that concept.
Yes.
We started with the word trust. We all have notions of what that means. But trusting the journey and what happens next, some trust that there's a reason for that. One thing builds on another. Now, maybe that takes faith.
It
and
does.
faith is a form of trust.
Exactly right. Yes.
Right? But faith that there are no failures, there's lessons, there's steps to getting where you need to be next. And that trust in yourself. There's a lot of ways I want people to consider the thought of trust. Self-trust, life trust, process trust. What does it mean to trust yourself, to believe in yourself?
Yes.
And I don't have answers to these things, but they are the thoughts that are worthy of a long drive and a notepad. Keep your eyes on the road. And just as you think, write. You'll be able to decipher it later. Flip the page. Keep writing. What does that mean? Dig into that. Because Kipling put it this way, to trust yourself when all men doubt you, and yet give allowance for their doubting too. He's a deep thinker.
Yes.
And he processed that word trust. That's my challenge.
Powerful.
Thank you, brother, for being with me today.
It's my pleasure to be here.
The rumor is Ryan's got a lunch for us next, and I'm excited about that. Thank you for being here. And for all of you who've taken the time to be with Dave and I today, I appreciate it. God bless you. I look to see you at the next Pinneo podcast.
It's going to be
Thanks
great.
so much.